I guess we will get started. Welcome, everybody, to the ARPA Day Committee meeting for Monday, December 5th. As with all meetings, the meeting of the ARPA Day Transformational Committee are public meetings as defined by the Connecticut Freedom of Information Act and should follow these guidelines. As this public meeting is held virtually, it will be recorded and made available to view on the DDS website. Committee members must make a good faith effort to state their name and title if applicable each time they speak during the meeting. If a committee member would like to speak, please raise your hand and one of the co-chairs will acknowledge you. There is no public comment portion to this meeting. Members of the public are able to join, watch, and listen only. All right, I sent out the minutes for the 11/7/2022 meeting. Are there any changes to those minutes? And someone make an accept the meetings of 11/7?
So moved, Beth Fisher.
Jennifer Keatley, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to start with Trevor today. Trevor, you're going to give us an update on the CELN committee. You're up.
All right. Hello, everyone. Trevor Rogers. I'm a transition advisor with DDS in the Employment and Day unit. And I'm just going to be updating everyone on our Employment Services Strategic Planning Group. I did give an overview of the recommendations that we made, I believe, last month, but since then we've received guidance from the Commissioner's Office on how to move forward. So I'm just going to update everybody so that everyone's aware of where we're moving and some of the new things that we're exploring. Just to make sure everyone's aware, the groups, the Employment Services Strategic Planning Committees, were created in response to the State Employment Leadership Network CELN's Finding and Observations Report, which was delivered in February 2021. And it went over our employment services and talked about areas of weakness in regards to employment services, as well as the different pieces that we're doing really well in. And our group was brought together to bring different stakeholders to look into how we can try to make our employment services stronger based on the different recommendations and pitfalls that the CELN report found. So the first committee is strategic goals and operating policies. One of the first things that one of their first recommendations has been implemented, and that's removing the maximum hours allowed per week according to the level of need score for individuals in ISC. I believe I did briefly discuss this when I presented this last time because we were able to get this accomplished before we received feedback from the Commissioner's Office. Another
Trevor,
piece.
Could I interrupt for 1 second? Beth is unable to see the presentation, and I think you were going to do it another way.
I did forget about that. I can try doing it that way because I have it pulled up, actually. Let me try that real quick. No problem. I'm going to try. Okay, 1 moment. Okay. I'm going to just try doing it this way. I know it's not like the full screen, but can everyone see that? Are you able to see, Beth? Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Oh,
thank you.
Let me just make sure I'm on the right one though. So one of the second goals, which we are looking into, and there's some overlap with one of our other committees, is looking into how we can ensure that employment goals and vocational related goals are covered in the IP. This group is also looking at identifying the roles and responsibilities of different employees within the state who work around employment services, whether it be case managers, transition advisors, as well as our connection to SDE in the schools, to clarify all of the different roles for stakeholders within the state, but also for families and individuals, because there are so many people who contact them, whether it be a transition advisor, a case manager, and I'm sure the list goes on. And so just clarifying how those roles work together and what they all do. The second committee is financing and contracting methods, and I'm actually not going to spend too much time on this because um, a lot of these goals have been implemented and they're going to be reviewed by Sean after this in a longer presentation about our one-time employment incentives. But the one thing I will quickly address, because it's not in there, is we are working on how we can make our submission of our one-time employment requests easier. This is on the ground level, and we're looking at our internal system first, so then we can look at how we can try to make it easier for everyone. We have been given support to look into this, so we're investigating this. And then we're also investigating, we're exploring the data on the amount of hours that individuals are traditionally employed when using the benchmarks payment to see if the 25-hour prorated amount is a correct amount or if it's too high. So that's something that we're also looking into. So training and technical assistance, they have been given the go-ahead to start looking into different trainings that can be brought in to offer job coach staff, as well as DDS staff. And so one of the pieces they're looking into is an ACRE certified job coach training. There's been a lot of investigation into this, and they're currently looking over the specifics of the training that they're looking at and trying to see if it's something that is best that we if we try to get our try to duplicate a similar training to the ones that are out there, or if we just try to purchase a training that's already out there. And another piece is providing technical support in a campaign that's designed to specifically highlight DDS individuals and jobs. This is something that was kind of done in the past where we had like employment idols and different features, but there's nothing like this that's relatively new. We do have some aspects of it, like our Fourth Tuesday forums are a great resource for individuals and families because we most of the time have individuals and families come and speak at those. Like for example, the last Fourth Tuesday forum, we had a customized employment job seeker, Emma, talk about her experience in customized employment, but really expanding on some of that and those success stories so that it can be readily available to everyone in the system would be very helpful. And then finally, something that's already been implemented is expanding the Sound e-learning training. It's a vision for employment is the course. I believe that all of our transition staff has taken it and the majority of our case managers have taken it. We are still working to get more of our case management staff to take it. And then we're also working with our new hires of our new case manager training. Another committee, services and service innovations. One of the pieces that they're working on is employment and day services webpage redesign. I thought really hard about if I should put implemented or moving forward, and I wanted to put moving ahead because we are still working on this. Over the last, since the report was delivered, our recommendations were delivered, much change has occurred on the employment and day services website. Our goal has been kind of, or our action steps have been split in two, where our goal up to Thanksgiving was to make sure that everything that was up there was clear and accurate. And our goal now, because everything that is up there is up to date and new. We've removed some old links, we've added some new materials, but now our goal is to make it more accessible to everybody in terms of creating different forms of how we review the information, like videos and different multimedia pieces to make sure that it's universal and user-friendly for everybody. Another piece that's being explored and we're trying to see, we've been given support by central office, but we do have to look at the feasibility of this because we don't know if it might require more intensive IT support than we have access to. And that is creating an easily accessible map on the EDS webpage that shows the available service providers in each area. What we mean by this is a map of the state. You would circle over it. I live in Southington, so in Southington, you would see the different providers in the area. And we could probably even go more in depth about the services that they offer. And this is something that we do think is very feasible because we have all the data. We just don't have it presented in this way. If you go on our website now, you can look at the breakdown by town, what providers are there. If you look in it, you can click right on their profile and see the services that they offer. We also have certain services broken down by which provider. Like if you go on the provider gateway, you can click customize employment services and see all of the providers who are certified for that. So this is data that we already collect. It's just, could we present it in a way that would be more helpful for everybody involved? And then another piece, which I kind of already touched upon, was individuals' plans should have employment goals or meaningful activity goals with the use of the life course. And this is some overlap in our strategic goals and operating policy subcommittee, and we are looking into how we can expand that. And then finally, for this group is creating an ongoing education effort via trainings and presentations to streamline the messaging regarding our services. Excuse me. And this would include different types of presentations and leave behind materials that could be given to different sources, such as our school districts, providers, and individuals and families, but also making sure we have multimedia ways to describe our different services on our website. So a little bit overlapping with step one, but the first recommendation, but also kind of taking it a step further with creating different materials that will then also be able to be housed on the website, but also be sent various different places. And this is a goal that there has been other groups that have kind of been moving this forward, such as the transition advisors within DDS that created an employment and day pathways document that they now use to have conversations with individuals and families. And it just simply reviews our different services, the different service options, portability, transportation. It's a brochure, and it's really easily presented in simple language so that it can be a tool when having conversations. And more materials like that are what's necessary to make sure that all the different people in our system understand our services. The last group that I'm going to talk about is employment performance measurement, quality assurance, and program oversight. They have been given the support and been told to move ahead in their goals. And there are already a lot of meetings on the books because we're now working internally to look at some of our different data collection sources and how we can move things together forward. We do have some individuals on this committee who work within that unit. I know Josh Gloria, who does a lot with our data within DDS, is on this committee. And so a lot of their goals now they're trying to take to the next step. So like creating clear standards for measuring our employment data, defining what success actually looks like in each service model when we're looking at that, evaluating the use of case manager annual QSR to capture different employment data points, and then also looking at the missing employment data that's necessary to determine performance. And a lot of this ties together because we need to be able to collect all of this employment data and make sure that all of the data that we collect is communicating with each other. But we also need to know when we're reviewing this, what are we actually looking for and what are we defining as success in terms of employment? And then finally, I just want to quickly talk about transportation. We have a new transportation committee, which was created in response to the recommendations delivered in the fall, as well as the recommendations that we had delivered first in, I believe, March of this year. And they met for the first time in November, and they're going to be meeting on a regular basis monthly. They actually are meeting again for the second time this Wednesday. And our team has actually been doing a lot to gather different DDS transportation data as well as transportation data from other sources so that we can have a really good and in-depth conversation. And in addition to that, we've brought together a very diverse group of stakeholder representatives, which includes DDS staff from different regions and levels, also ADS staff, provider agency staff, and leadership. We have individuals who are supported by DDS, family members, and subject matter experts in areas related to transportation as well as DD services. So we have a really robust group of individuals, and we're bringing them the most accurate and up-to-date data that we have on transportation, as well as working with the ARPA um, assistive technology group because one of their key points is related to transportation. So Patricia Simbala, who is in charge of that, has actually joined our committee, and she has been representing some of those new pieces that she's exploring there as well. So it's a group that we're very excited for because I think that everybody agrees that transportation is something that we all worry about and think about when we're trying to place individuals in different services. So this is something that we really thought instead of having each group make different recommendations about transportation or discuss transportation in some way because it did come up in every group. We created a whole group to talk about this. And I believe this is the first group within DDS to be bringing together all of these different stakeholders just to talk about transportation for the individuals that we serve. So we're very excited to see where that goes. And just from what I know about what they've been looking into, I think that they're going to make some really great recommendations about how we can affect change in terms of transportation. And those are all of our recommendations and then the commissioner's feedback. So If there are any questions, I will take them. If not, thank you for letting me present today. And I'm very excited and proud of all these groups and the work that they've been able to accomplish.
This is Keith Lavalette, DDS. Trevor, you may not be able to answer this question, but is there anything else that this group can do with the sound groups that we're missing?
Well,
It might be
yes. So what I'll put out there is in these recommendations that I've shown, the things that are moving forward, we're still investigating. So certain pieces, just like if I was going to give an example, this goal 2 here, where a map is our idea. We have the goal, we've been working towards it, but we might not have the resources to push that forward. And I know that the ARPA committees do, and they might align with some of the goals that our groups have. So there might be some different things that this group or other ARPA groups may be able to assist us in accomplishing those goals. So
Keith Lavalette, DDS. Beth, you have a question?
Thanks, Keith. Beth Fisher from CUNY Employment Opportunities. Trevor, I'm just wondering on this page, the number 4, are you looking at, or do you know if the committee is looking at doing something for all of the stakeholders or individual like brochures or PowerPoints for different stakeholders? I think there can be a lot of crossover, but in my experience, I think something for employers has to be very different than, talking about than talking to service providers or families or case managers. So I would just put that out there that, the employers really need kind of a different targeted message. So I don't know
yeah.
what the thinking was
And
here.
I do believe that is the goal. I think that the first and foremost goal was to get information for individuals and families, but I do know that they're also talking about that. Even as far as to start, because we did have this conversation. I'm not part of this committee, but I like to go to it because they always bring up some very interesting ideas. So I'm often like in the background. And they talked about a page that I don't want any of you to look at because the webmaster's still redoing, but our resources for different stakeholders on our Employment a Day website. And we have it broken down between employers, families, individuals, adult service providers, and then DDS staff. And so we showed a lot of that to them and took suggestions and all of that. And so I know that that's something that's on the forefront, is that we know we need to make sure that we're presenting it to the right audience, because everybody's wondering a little bit things differently. Providers need a little bit more technical information as well as DDS staff, but individuals and families don't necessarily need as much of that technical information. They just want to understand,
Right.
what does this mean for me? And so that is something that we're trying to make sure that we do both of. Even as far as on our website, the newest page is customized employment, and we're trying to make a lot of our different services have a similar setup where if you click on the customized employment page, there's a whole overview, there's a video that's for all audiences, but then there's 2 links where there's more information for individuals and families, and then more information for providers, because the information for individuals and families is, universal language that explains what does this service mean if you and your family member are going to go through it. And the one for providers is very technical, like our CE registry, how to become certified and all of that. And so we're trying to make sure that we make the different pieces for the different audiences, because we do know that it's very different, the information they're asking, or at least
Great.
that's best for them.
Just to follow up on that, Beth Fisher from CUNY. I think for employers, what we have found is that leave behinds are not particularly effective. It's about building relationships. And I think, DDS certainly can be supportive in putting something out there for employers, but like for our agency, we work with individuals who are also funded by DEMIS, for example. So, our approach is really, it might be a little bit different than just a DDS approach to what we can offer. So, if we were going to put together a brochure, for example, it might look different than what DDS would do, but frankly, we're not going to invest in brochures because we find they don't work. So
Yeah.
for what
And
that's
one thing I will say is we have been making an extra effort to have that interagency collaboration, because we did have an interagency collaboration group, and they ended up accomplishing some of their goals, and then we ended up tacking on some of their goals to the rest of the committees to make sure that there's an interagency piece in all. And so, for example, even like our transportation group has much more interagency collaboration than the previous groups, just because it's been an extra effort and this is a new group. But I know that a lot of these different projects, we're working with BRS, but I know there's also a lot of connections that we have with SDE. The strategic goals and operating policies, for example, we are actually in January meeting with we're going to be bringing together individuals so that we can talk about the piece that we had about transition advisors, case managers, and staff that come into play with employment for individuals. We want to make sure that we're correctly discussing SDE's role, and we all have that piece. So we are meeting with them to make sure that that's something that we're not missing. And we've made it very clear to the committees that their goal is to bring in different stakeholders, and they have leeway to, bring guests and bring different presenters up, similar to how we do, so that they're the most informed that they can, but also so they get those different sides of you, because we think that's really important. And they've been encouraged, if they don't have somebody on their committee that has a specific point of view like that, to bring them on. And just to give an example, like the financing and contracting methods subcommittee, which talked about our one-time employment incentives, which I did skip over a bit, but Sean will cover a lot of that. We originally only had one case manager from one region, but the one-time employment incentives, they're kind of handled differently sometimes between regions. So before we even started making all these changes, we made sure to get representatives from every region to make sure that we could talk about how it's different, because that was one of the crux of the issue. So the groups are ever evolving, because we're bringing in stakeholders to either stay or just come for a little bit to help us make sure that we're getting different points of view.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Keith Lavalette, DDS. Any other questions? Seeing none. Oh, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Jennifer from UCP. Trevor, thank you for your presentation. I just wanted to circle back on training. The ACRE training, is that, I may have missed and you may have said it, is that something that is offered free by DDS, but going to be required for all employment providers? And will that be job coach specific, or will it be agency specific?
So we have not explored, they're still exploring this. I'm assuming that if we are going to make this something that we require, it would be something that we're going to cover the cost for. I can't promise that, because it's still something that's being investigated. I know that currently we're looking at the cost of providing the training. That's one of the different pieces in the background that we've been looking at, to kind of see, we've been given support, but we want to see what the estimated cost is and the feasibility of it. But I know that that's something that's been happening in the background, because we've actually pulled together a lot of that data last week to send it over. So yes, I don't believe that. I'm going to leave it at that, because I don't have a solid answer, but I do know that we have been looking at the cost, because I do believe I don't even think it was something that I think that the goal is to make sure that all job coaches get it. But even in the language, I think that they were very careful not to say it was required in their recommendation, because in the beginning, right now we're in a staffing crisis. So obviously that might cause some hardship. So I think that to start, it's something that we're going to see if we can implement, and then try to get staff to go to. But I can always I can always talk to the committee chairing and get some more up-to-date information.
Thank you. Yes, just kind of, I was thinking about that in relation to the customized employment, how it is specific to the job coach. And with the turnover that we have at this point, it's difficult to get people certified for customized employment because it's tied to that specific job coach. And so, with this ACRE training or something similar, I'm concerned about running into that similar situation.
Yeah, I understand that, especially with customized employment. So
Yeah. Thank you.
Keith Lavalette, DDS. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much, Trevor.
thank you.
Okay, next we have rates and current incentives in IASE program. Sean?
Thanks, Keith. So yeah, I'm Sean Bannon from DDS. I'm the director of the Operations Center. And Keith asked if I could present. Full disclaimer, this was actually Trevor's presentation, and I guess we didn't want to overwork him. So I'm gonna present this today, and Trevor, feel free to jump in case I miss anything. And let me try and share my screen. And so is everyone able to see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So basically, out of the cell and work groups, there were some recommendations that were made in terms of trying to streamline some of our employment incentives. And this presentation is going to just kind of run through some of those changes. Most of them have just recently taken effect. So effective October 1st, there is one uniform rate for the employment incentives for people that are in ISE or a combination of ISE and another service. And for those who are in a group day or customized employment, we have the $65 an hour rate, which is in line both with customized employment and also the average rate for people. Previously, when we were providers were able to bill for per diem services, we provided a different rate for the ISE, but they were able also to bill for the full day. So this rate takes that into effect, so the providers aren't losing any money. And it's, pretty much the same that they were receiving prior to the change. Another change that was recommended was adding the 1-year benchmark. So when someone gets hired in a competitive job, the agency gets an incentive payment, which is prorated up to $2,000 for the person starting the job, for maintaining the job for 3 months, 6 months, and now we added 1 year. And I know Trevor mentioned trying to streamline some of the process. So another way we tried to streamline things a bit was, instead of requiring the agency to have every pay stub in order to pay the benchmark, we just need the initial pay stub, the most current pay stub, and then if something crossed the calendar year, we would need that so that we could also calculate, the hours worked. So providers would request this one-time funding the same way that they always have. If a provider is on the contract and the individual has a contract service authorization, then the provider contacts the resource manager. The case manager should always be aware and in support as well. And it goes through our normal one-time process. The agency would get the authorization, and the provider gives what we call the actuals, so that resource management can create the payment, and it's paid through the authorization system as always. And on the individual budget side, the one-time request goes to the case manager. That goes through the process. And if there is a career plan, then that goes to resource management for review and sign off. And the FI would make the payment as they typically do on the budget side of things. So in regards to career plans, the funds are used to provide opportunities for people to explore their work preferences, develop interview skills, learn about other employment opportunities, and have on-site work experiences, work interviews in the community while continuing their current group program. And this just outlines the rate, the $55 an hour as described before if they are part of ISE, and $65 an hour if they were in the group day. And then the completed one-time plan is a fee of about $785. So it's important to note, not everybody needs a career plan, but they can definitely be helpful. And there's some links embedded throughout the PowerPoint where you can see the career plan guide and the career plan template. So in some cases, someone may have a lead, there's a possible job, but the employer isn't quite sure if it's a good match. So we have the working interview, which is typically up to 40 hours, often over 2 weeks, where the individual can get paid. Currently, the rate lines up with the ADS rate of $17.89 an hour. And any staff hours that the agency provides, again, are at that uniform $55 or $65 an hour rate. And it gives the employer a chance to assess whether you know, that person is a good match for the job. Intensive job placement and training. So these are typically used for additional training. Sometimes it's needed right in the beginning when someone's just learning the job. Other times there may be a change in management or a change in job duties, or the person may, you know, be experiencing something outside of work that's affecting their job performance and they need a little bit of extra support on the job. So the intensive job placement and training hours are available to help the person maintain their job. Again, we mentioned the benchmarks before. We have the job start. So in order to get the benchmarks, the person must be an ISE. And I did hear Trevor mention that they're looking at the prorate amount, whether 25 hours is a good match, but currently it's 25 hours, I believe, for the full $2,000, and then it's prorated. So I think it's 20, like 15 to 20 is like $1,500. 10 to 15 hours would be like, or maybe 1,600. 10 to 15 is 1,200. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but they are prorated amounts. And you know, if a person's working, you know, when they start the job, 3 months, 6 months, 1 year benchmarks, they receive them. Also, if the person transitions to natural supports, so they were receiving some agency supports before on the job, and they have been successful and they no longer need that support, there is a benchmark for the provider to make that transition. Employment training incentives. So in some cases, a provider may want to send their employees to an employment training. And we recognize that there's the cost of the training itself, so a registration fee, but also the cost to have a staff who was previously providing supports to have those hours covered. So a provider can request to have the cost of the registration covered, but also to they can request to have the replacement staff cost covered. And these are you know, understanding that these are going to be highly variable. They're considered on a case-by-case basis. And then just to recap, I won't read through it all, but we did unify the employment incentive rates. So now that we have 2 rates, before it was basically 9. So we have just the $55 an hour if someone is in IDV, ISE only, or ISE in group day. And if someone is in group day or customized employment, it's $65 an hour. Most of the other rates have stayed the same. And before I jump to any questions, I would ask Trevor if he has anything that I missed. I know I kind of ran through this quickly, or anything that he wants to add.
Thanks, Sean. Trevor Rogers, DDS Transition Advisor. I think you did a fantastic job. I do just happen to have, I made it this morning like a table, I'm not gonna share it, of the prorated amount. So just for example, I believe it's like in 1 hour turns out to be about $80. So if you are working 20 hours, it's $1,600 is the prorated amount. If you're working 15 hours, it's $1,200, the prorated amount. So it's like Sean said, it's based on the proration, but if you were trying to figure it out, I believe you could just do $80 times the amount, and that's how you'll get it.
Thanks, Trevor. I'm not sure if it's updated. I know in the past it was like, I think in $400 increments, so there were ranges, but
yeah, I
yeah,
do think it is in
this
some
is
sort of
good to see.
increment like that. Yeah, I just didn't know for sure, but yes.
Yep. Thank you. All right. I can't, let me see if I can pull up the chat here in case there's any questions, but does anyone have any questions?
This is Keith Lavalette, DDS. Beth had asked if both of these can be sent to the committee. So if you guys can get them to me, I can get them to the committee.
Sure. All right. So, and then Jennifer, I see also had a question. How's the prorated amount determined? Many individuals work varied hours depending on health, seasonality of work, employer, and short staffing. So that's the reason why we collect the pay stubs. It's, you know, over the course of 3 months, it's the average hours worked. So if someone worked, you know, 20 hours half the time and 10 hours half the time, then it works out to 15 hours a week. And that's how the prorated amount works. So. Any other questions? Beth, yep.
Beth Fisher from CUNY. Thanks, Sean. Just, I want to clarify which question. So it's obviously you're taking an average, but is it, so if it's payment, it would be the average for those 3 months, the 6 months would be the average for those 6 months? Because if you're not collecting all the pay stubs, how would you know that? I didn't
Right.
follow that.
So on the pay stub, typically, you're going to have your year-to-date amounts. And so it would look, once you know the pay rate, you can calculate how many hours were worked. Understanding that, you know, if someone starts working in December, then in February,
Right.
you know, you're gonna need the end of your pay stub in addition to the new pay stub so that you can calculate the hours worked. If you know, this is brand new, I'm sure we're gonna have to work through a few things. I can imagine if someone's doing overtime or gets a pay raise, you know, that's information that, you know, would be helpful for the resource manager so that so they could, you know, calculate that accurately. But
So then I guess it would be up to the provider to make sure any changes in every single person's rate of pay gets reported somehow? Or more to come on that, or?
Well, just for the benchmark. So if someone, you know, has been working for a while, they're all done with the benchmarks, then, you know, we're not gonna need to know the rates of pay. But yeah, it would be helpful if you knew that someone's rate of pay changed, then just to let, you know, resource management know, whoever you submit the one time to, let them know so that you know, things can be calculated.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
This is Keith Lavalette, DDS. Aside from this, Sean, I think I heard that the rates that the providers have been waiting for are supposed to be coming out in January. Is that? Did I
So
hear?
yeah, the intent, the plan is to have, you know, new rates for January. So hopefully that'll help people be able to plan. That's correct.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Beth, your hand's raised. Is it? Okay. All right, seeing no other questions, thank you, Sean.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next is the discussion on the final goals and outcomes. I brought this up for everyone to see. Can everybody see this? It's on residential outcomes right now, but is everybody able to see?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Peter just asked that this is a lot of the work that we've come up with, and we just want to get this finalized, but we're talking about the day outcomes. And for the day system outcomes, we're looking at the increase in the number of individuals with a competitive job, increase in the number of individuals who receive vocational support in the community, increase in the day opportunities for individuals with significant medical and behavioral support needs in the least restrictive setting. Individuals will have increased choices in least restrictive settings options along with continuum of day supports, and these options will be provided by more providers. And then outcomes for individuals who transition to an alternative day setting. Individuals who are identified in a day transition plan will receive the number of support hours that best meet their needs. Individuals who are identified in a day transition plan will receive an increase in the wages they earn. Individuals who are identified in a day transition plan will experience an increase in the number of community participation hours. And I know, Beth, we had talked earlier that you had one question about splitting something up.
Thanks, Keith. Beth Fisher from CUNY. What I was referring to splitting up was actually in the minutes. So I guess my question is, so in our minutes, there are a lot more there are a lot more outcomes listed than what's here. So is it correct to say that, you know, some of those were just ideas kicking around in the minutes and that this is what we're settling on for the final outcomes? I'll give you an example. In the minutes, what I was referring to is that, let's see, it's the third bullet under review of outcomes in the minutes talks about decreasing the number of people making sub-minimum wages and decrease the number of individuals who are in non-integrated settings. So like in my mind, those are two separate goals. They're not really one bullet. You know, some of that's not in these outcomes. So is that
That's a
moot
good
at this
question.
point?
Peter developed this from our outcomes, and I'm wondering if he missed those. I know he's I know these were sent to him, but they may have been sent in a couple of different forms. So I will double check on that and make sure those get added.
Well, and again, just
and separate.
My perspective, I mean, I was not one who was in favor of addressing the sub-minimum wage issue in here. I mean, I think that that's a whole nother big can of worms, I think, that has to get addressed, but I'm not so sure you want to set that up an anticipated outcome in this plan. That would be my recommendation. And
Keith,
if I
this
may
is
ask,
Catherine.
Go ahead, Catherine.
So obviously I had made that recommendation before, and I would hope the department would still consider that. And I don't think we have to set a number. I don't think we're saying everybody will move out of that, but I think that's an important goal.
All right, and again, I don't know why they're not on this page. I will have to double check with Peter and find out what the department's thought was on that. Are there any other questions? Am I frozen?
I have another
Okay.
question. Can you hear me?
Go ahead, Beth.
Yeah, Beth Fisher from CUNY. Just on these outcomes, I guess one of my questions was, under the day system outcomes, the very last bullet talks about individuals will have increased choices, which I think is great. I'm just wondering how that gets measured.
Again, good question, and that's something we will, you know, a number of choices they have. I'm not quite sure what Peter was thinking on that, and I'm not sure who submitted that. If it was somebody from our committee, if they would like to add to it. A lot of these outcomes were generated through our committee, also the advisory committee, and even individual and day committee, I think, asked about a couple of outcomes. Any other questions? Okay. I do have a transition initiative update. We have heard from providers, and in talking with the leadership team, we are now not requiring a transition plan from all providers. We are taking the mandatory piece out of it. It will be for agencies we hope will want to work with us and move forward as they transition their agencies. With these changes in the first phase, we're looking at it more as a pilot. You know, as we move through the first phase, we're going to make changes and try to get the second phase up and running when we do that. Why we do that, we're looking at a submission period. Instead of submitting a transition plan, we're going to have different periods where they submit the plan and the regions will get back to these agencies in different time periods. So if you submitted the plan in say time X, the regions will get back, and then if you submitted it in the next period of time, the regions will work with you during that time period. I think everybody has received a letter and an interest survey that went out December 1st for phase 1. So any agency is now able to answer the interest survey. Region will get back to you, and we'll start moving on these transition plans. So it's moving forward, and we're excited about that. So any questions on the whole transition transformation plans? Sean, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to make one comment. So yes, I understand that the transition plans are now optional, but I just want to mention that they're still strongly encouraged. We are hoping that, you know, providers will engage to the best of their ability, you know, for what makes sense for them. So just wanted to mention that as well.
Thank you, Sean. Any other? Beth, you have a question?
Yes, Beth Fisher from CUNY. So am I correct to assume that in order to get though, you still have to do a plan?
Yes, you do. Okay. Jennifer?
Thank you, Jennifer from UCP. Is there a template of a plan already? Did I miss that? Has it already been kind of presented? Because when I think about what it's going to take to move somebody from one setting to another, it isn't so much about a plan as much as it's about getting with the individual and their team and going through an IP process. It is not necessarily about what our agency is going to do that, because it's also person-centered. And since the goal is to be person-centered, I'm not sure. And when I try to wrap my head around what a plan is going to look like, the plan is as simple as I'm going to meet with people and their teams and figure out where they want to go. And I just don't know that it's necessary to go through a planning process, meet 4 times a year, and provide an update each time, a written update each time. So I'm hoping that this plan is literally as simple as that, and doesn't, because I can't even, if I have to put numbers to it and all of that, it just becomes very cumbersome.
Yeah, in the first phase, if an agency is interested, they'd fill out the interest survey. And that's basically just say, are you a residential provider? Are you a day provider? And then you will receive for example, you're a day provider, you will receive the day template, which gets filled out. And it's just questions, and there are fillable brackets. Once you answer the questions, you just submit it to the regions will review it and get back to the agencies if there's additional information that's needed, approve the plan, and move forward.
Can I ask just a follow-up question, since you said approve the plan? So normally when a person wants to move from one service to another, so long as the team agrees on it, there isn't a plan that needs to be submitted and approved in order to move through that process. So I'm wondering why in this case there needs to be that process.
For the ARPA incentives, as you're transitioning through, you're developing whatever the plan may be, and the regions would need to approve what you're doing to receive the ARPA incentives.
Okay, so it's a more stringent evaluation of the process, because again, the process right now, if somebody is going for an ISE incentive outside of the ARPA, we don't have to go through a process to do that. It's just a team decision, so long as the funding is there.
Right, and with the ARPA incentive plan, I guess it would be a little more stringent. You're completing a plan, the regions are reviewing it, and then approving the plan.
Yeah, it would seem to me that since the goal is to move people along in the process, that making it more cumbersome to do that would not be in anybody's best interest. Just my take on it.
I understand your point. And Beth, you have another question?
Yes, Beth Fisher from CUNE. Let me say, I agree with Jennifer. I too have really struggled to wrap my head around what would a plan look like for our agency in that kind of a context. And in looking at the document, the Deloitte document that went out on December 1st, I mean, it says under provider agency transition plans, the very first thing is that you select your site for restructuring. And then it talks about, specifically organizational restructuring plans. We don't need to reorganize or restructure our agency to move people from GSC to ISC. We're doing that every day. We're doing it through the team process. So I really kind of rack my head at what does that mean for an agency that, and we only do, employment. So maybe it makes a lot more sense in the residential realm, but I really am having a hard time understanding this piece.
And again, I think the department's looking at it, if you have a GSE program and you're looking to move a number of those individuals out of that program, or you're looking to close that program. Not everybody would. It's every agency's different, and they're trying to leave it as open as possible so agencies that have some transition plans in their minds, they could submit them the way they want to, have the regions review them and ask questions and approve the plans as the agencies come forward with it.
So just to follow up, could it just be as simple as we're going to continue to identify people through the IP process to move them from GSE to, and I mean, and then we got to pick like a start date, because I mean, we're in process with, 3 or 4 people right now. So I'm not saying, hold on, wait for the ARP incentives to get into. It's kind of like jumping into the middle of a moving stream here.
As the plans are developed, it's not in the plans. You're not putting the individuals' names in the plans, but at some point during the process, the regions will need to know who's moving.
And they would know that through the authorization process when somebody moves from GSE to ISE.
But they wouldn't know if those individuals are eligible for an ARPA incentives. People through the ARPA program or the ARPA incentives would be done through the approved plan.
So does that mean that if somebody's name is not on the list in our plan and then they decide they'd like to go into ISE, we wouldn't get an incentive for that person because they weren't pre-identified?
The plans could change and the plans could be approved later down the road, but the incentives are for people that are on the improved plan. If you're moving 3 individuals out of a GSE program, those are the 3 individuals that would be incentivized for the agency.
Yeah, I guess I would just say that this is adding a lot of red tape that really doesn't feel necessary.
Understood. We'll hopefully learn a lot through the phase 1. We do have one agency that submitted a plan. Actually, it's both day and residential. So as we move forward, we're hoping other agencies join in, and then we're hoping to learn a lot as we move forward and get ready for phase 2, and maybe we'll make changes before we get to phase 2 that are more understanding of your concerns. Are there any other questions? All right. I have this here. What other resources are needed to move forward with individuals moving out of congregate settings to employment? The ARPA group have been meeting and coming up with things. The leadership has. They just wanted me to bring it forth to the committee. Are there other resources that this committee feels are needed to move an individual forward? Is there anything we've missed? Anybody have any points? I don't see any hands raised, so I guess we're all set there. Other Other concerns and topics, I have a couple of things I wanted to bring up. At our next meeting on December 19th, Deloitte Consulting will be part of our meeting. I also want to throw out there on January 2nd is our next meeting after that, and I'm assuming most people are off that day. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to cancel the January 2nd meeting. And then if we're following the same schedule, we would still meet twice in January on the 16th and the 30th. Is that good for everyone? And we can
No.
continue.
This is Jennifer from UCP. The 16th is also a holiday. It is the Martin Luther King holiday.
Good. That's a good catch. Thank you, Jennifer. Any suggestions on that one? Do we move it up a day to the 17th? I'm open to thoughts on that. We were meeting Tuesdays. Beth,
What about the 9th and the 30th?
the 9th and the 30th? Hold on one second. And the 9th does work for me. If anybody cannot make that, if they could just let me know, and then over the next few days, I'll send out a new invite for the 9th and the 30th. And one of those two dates, our McDowell Communications, our communication consultant, will be at one of those January meetings. We just haven't set the meeting times yet, and we just changed the date. So hopefully we'll get them at the 9th, but if not, they'll be on for the 30th. Is there any other concerns or topics for the membership? Beth?
Beth Fisher from CUNE. I'm not expecting you to answer this, Keith, but I guess it's maybe a suggestion. Throughout our meetings, we've talked a little bit about group-supported employment. And, obviously the goal is to move people into more independent settings. And, I think we're all on board with that. But, I think we also recognize that there is a cohort of individuals who are going to need supported employment for the foreseeable future. So, we've talked a little bit about the subminimum wage issue in this group. I guess I would like to hear from DDS. What is their vision? What is your vision of group supported employment moving forward? Because I think that's going to have a huge impact on the system. And here we are talking about system transformation, and there's really not been much said about that.
And that's something I could have. I'm going to let Sean speak first, and then I'll go. Sean?
All right, thanks. And maybe you're going to let me off the hook there, Keith, but
No.
I think that, there's still a place for group supported employment. We recognize that, and that, the employment is a continuum, right? So someone may be in group supported employment, and, the next step for them is going to be, competitive, independent employment. But someone who's in DSO or another program, maybe GSE is the next step for them. So we do recognize that there's still a need for it. And it will be, to the best of my knowledge, still a part of our continuum of services.
And if subminimum wages go away?
I know that there's differing thoughts on this. And I know that's a struggle for some providers. because, you know, that serves some population and some employers that, you know, aren't willing to pay, you know, minimum wage. I think, you know, planning for it the best as you can now. Well, it looks like you want to talk. I'll let you talk.
Sorry, Sean. I was just going to respond to that. I don't necessarily think it's fair to say some employers don't want to pay minimum wage, because really what we're talking about is a situation where an employer could hire 2 non-disabled people to do a job. And we are presenting them with 4 individuals because they're each working at 50% productivity. So it's not that the employer doesn't want to pay for the wages. It's that we're asking them to pay for 2 extra employees that really aren't needed. You know, right now, you know, jobs are easy to find, but that's not going to last forever.
Right.
So
No,
I think it's
understood.
really looking at that, the finance piece, because, you know, we've done so many cost analysis and we would lose our shirts if we paid everybody sub minimum wage. We could not afford to run the program. So it's just something that I keep wanting to put on people's radar.
Mhm. Yeah, I understand it's a difficult situation. And again, you know, as much as possible, the more you can plan for moving people forward, you know, the better. Realizing that, you know, nothing is easy. And you
Yeah.
know, I don't have the
It's,
magic answer, but
yeah. Now I acknowledge it's not easy. I mean, I've been around long enough to have kind of gone through this system where they eliminated everything but competitive employment. And, you know, that is a population that tends to have higher work skills. But even in that population, there were a lot of people who just sat home and never worked again. And I don't want to see that happen with our folks here, because a lot of this has the potential to undermine the GSE program. And there are a lot of people who need it. So that's my 2 cents. Or maybe it's a whole dollar at this point.
This is Keith Lovell at DDS. One thing that I've seen when I looked at the possibility of the elimination of the sub-minimum wage is that they're looking to do it over a period of, say, 5 years, you know, like 3 to 5 years. So it's still, you know, it's nice to start planning now, but if it does happen, I think they're going to give agencies time to try to figure out what to do next. So. But I will bring that up and see if we could add that to as an agenda item further down the road. Any other topics or concerns? Okay, seeing none, our next meeting is December 19th at 4 p.m. Do we get do we have a motion to adjourn?
Jennifer Keatley, UCP, make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All right. Everybody, looking forward to see you on the 19th, and we'll